Welcome to this edition of AFMC.
I'll tell you how I got better. I'm
glad to be here.
But a mission to
Delivery of. Well, I think that we're going to talk about everybody's.
Arkansas is the second highest prescriber.
Welcome to AFMC TV. I'm Robin Ledbetter. Thank you for joining us. Today I have with me Amy Nofziger. She is the Director of Fraud Victim Support with AARP, a role that she's had for nearly 2 decades. And she leads a team of fraud specialists and dozens of volunteers who help victims of fraud through the AARP Fraud Network helpline. Amy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me today, Robin.
So tell us a little bit about your work and what you do with AARP.
So AARP is, a membership organization for people 50 plus, and we really listen to our members on what, issues are out there concerning them. And one that has obviously concerned them for many, many years, and hence my 20 plus years being here at AARP, is fraud and keeping their hard-earned money in their pockets. We know that scammers work every single day to steal money, not just from the 50 plus, from everyone, let's be honest. But again, older adults hold the majority of wealth in the United States. They've worked hard their whole lives to accumulate this wealth. So of course, scammers are going to go after them. So we have the Fraud Watch Network. It's a free resource for anyone of any age, and you don't have to be an AARP member. And with the Fraud Watch Network, we have the helpline, and that's really my main responsibility. We receive about 300 to 400 phone calls every day from people either reporting fraud, have questions about fraud, or unfortunately, if they have been a victim of fraud, one of our 200 fraud specialists across the country will work with them one-on-one and guide them through the steps that they need to take on this journey. And not only will they guide them on the steps, they'll be there as an emotional support, because we know that fraud is just not financially devastating, it's emotionally devastating as well.
And fraud, it was at an all-time high in 2022, is that correct?
So this is a really interesting thing with the numbers. People keep saying, fraud is increasing, fraud is increasing. Fraud is increasing, but let's also account for the fact that reporting fraud is increasing, which is important because we know victims of frauds and scams do not report like other victims of crime. There is so much shame and embarrassment that society puts on these victims that oftentimes they will not report. We can estimate about 1 in 10 to even 1 in 20 do not report. So is fraud increasing? Probably, but is reports increasing as well? And I think that's a good thing. But regardless of kind of what the numbers say, this is a big problem for everybody, and we all need to pay attention to it.
And you can't educate yourself out of it. So awareness is key. What does that mean?
So I like to say education, awareness, interventions, prosecution, reporting, all of that needs to be involved in this. And one of the other things we need to make sure when you talk about awareness is that we never think this is going to happen to us, right? I don't think I'll ever be a victim, says so many people out there. So being aware of the fact that you might be a victim, you have a target on your back. If you have any sort of money, whether it's $5 or $5 million, a criminal is going to come after you. So we all need to look at this as a we problem in our society, not just a you, the victim problem, because this is affecting us all. So first off, just be aware that it's happening. Be aware that anytime you're on social media, a criminal is probably there. Be aware that anytime you're at the store, someone might be following you to steal your purse. This isn't to put fear in you. It's really to empower you to take charge back and know that we can all fight against these frauds and scams.
And so how do you spot red flags? I mean, you mentioned a little bit of those, but awareness. Are there other things that, let's say, the general community should watch for?
So right now, there's probably 100 different frauds and scams that are classified out there, whether it's the grandparent scam, the romance scam, and it can be overwhelming for people. So when I talk about things to watch out for, I want to focus in on just a few key things. And the key things I want you to resonate in your brain so that if you're on the phone, you have an email, you get a text message, you go, oh, I remember that lady and that pink shirt she talked about prepaid gift cards. So if anyone ever asks you to send them or to go buy a prepaid gift card, and those are those plastic things that you see at your grocery store hanging on the big carousels, they have brand names on them. If anyone says you have to pay a fine or a debt with one of those, or they need one for some reason, stop. It's 100% a scam. So remember, red flag, prepaid gift cards. If anyone instructs you to go to a store like a liquor store, a smoke store, a Subway shop, and have you put money into an ATM, red flag. That is not a typical ATM. What they're doing is instructing you to go to a crypto ATM machine, which are usually located at those types of businesses. They want you to deposit your money in there, but they'll never say crypto. They'll say ATM. So listen again. ATM. If anyone instructs you to go to one to deposit money to pay a fine or a debt, it's a scam. Anyone asks for your Medicare number, your Social Security number, or if anyone asks for remote access into your device. So what that looks like is someone will say, oh, there's a problem on your account. There's a problem with Amazon, eBay, whatever it is. I just need to remote access into your device. They'll use keywords like AnyDesk or Team Viewer. Again, if you hear remote access, Team Viewer, AnyDesk, Medicare number, Social Security number, crypto ATM, or gift card, stop, move on. It's 100% a scam.
So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about healthcare providers, because much of our audience is the healthcare community. What do you want the healthcare community to know about fraud and their patients? Because oftentimes they are the lifeline and those that see them the most.
I think, what you already do is listen, right? You're listening to your patients every single day. You're usually listening for, signs and symptoms of maybe an illness, but listen for other things. Do they have a new best friend that's in their life? Are they giddy when they're normally not someone who's giddy? That might mean they're involved in like a new friendship or a romance scam. Are they on their phone, like in the waiting room more often than not? Right? That's a red flag. Just ask some questions. Say, have you heard about the latest scam that's out there? What would you do, Mrs. Smith, if you got a phone call pretending to be your grandchild? Another thing that we see is that you have increased vulnerability to being a victim of a fraud or a scam if you've had a significant life event happen. Now, who hasn't had a significant life event recently? But we do know that older adults are losing their friends and maybe their partners. So that is something to watch out for. If you have someone that has recently suffered, whether a health stressor or lost a loved one, that is when they are very vulnerable to frauds and scams. And just bring it up in conversation. Maybe even have some pamphlets in your waiting room about, the latest frauds and scams. Like, here's some things to watch out for. We often don't talk about this because we have so many other priorities that we need to talk about with healthcare, like the medications. But let me tell you, people who are victims of frauds and scams, they have many significant, not just health, like physical health outputs, but mental health outcomes as well that have a significant negative impact on their lives.
So are there specific things that healthcare providers should know about when speaking to their victims? Is there something specific that they need to watch for? You mentioned awareness, educating your patients, but what are specific things that you would point out to them?
So AARP is really trying to change the perception and the language of how we speak about fraud victims and financial exploitation victims in society. Usually when you read articles, it'll say, oh, that person fell for that scam or they were duped, right? And we put the blame on the victim. We don't put the blame on the criminal. And that's where the blame needs to be. So if you have a patient that shares with you that they clicked on a link or they, did send money or they're in this romance scam, again, it is just always lead that conversation with kindness and empathy. And I'm sure you do, right? But this is one thing that we really just want to emphasize is just say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Give me 1 second and let me go find some resources for you. And then certainly use us as a resource on the helpline. We know your time is precious and you might not be able to sit with that person for the next 30 minutes and talk about the scam situation. We can, right? Use us as a resource. We can. But if someone shares with you that they have been a victim, don't say things like, oh, I can't believe that happened. Like, you were a law professor. I don't understand what's going on. Or, oh my gosh, they're losing their faculties. No. They were just a victim of a crime, and they always just need to be treated with kindness and empathy.
And so what resources, you mentioned the helpline, what are the resources that are out there?
So AARP Fraud Watch Network has so many resources that, again, are free and available for anyone of any age, and you don't have to be a member. You can go on aarp.org/Fraud Watch Network. There you're going to have access to the Perfect Scam podcast. This podcast, it's hit millions of listeners, and it's just fantastic. They really dissect the different frauds and scams that are out there. It's great to listen to. It's great to recommend to people who maybe just love their podcast on their walk. But it really is a great, awareness tool for people to learn about frauds and scams. We have the scam tracking map. This is where you can actually do a deep dive into your community and find out what scams are being reported there. And I think this is a great kind of in with some of the patients. You could be like, hey, I was just on the scam tracking map with AARP the other day, and I saw that the grandparent scam is really hitting our community right now. Have you talked to your family about what you would do if you got a call saying, your grandchild was in trouble? Well, maybe have that conversation, right? I think that's a great way for people to start the conversation about fraud. And then certainly we have the Fraud Watch Network helpline, where, again, anyone can call. You can call and report a scam. Perhaps you weren't a victim. You just got a suspicious phone call and someone was asking for your Medicare number, and you want us at AARP to know, please call us and report it. Maybe you have someone who's, I got this sweepstakes thing. I don't know if it's a scam. I'm not sure. And maybe you don't have the knowledge. Have them call us. We will verify for them that if it's a scam or not. And then certainly if you have someone in your office that has been a victim of fraud, have them call the helpline, and one of our trained fraud specialists can walk them through the situation.
It's so interesting that different scams are relevant in different areas of the country. It's so interesting in that you would think that it would be kind of a blanket, this is what the biggest or the most popular prevalent scams that there are right now at this time. What are you seeing? You mentioned that there are different ones for different regions, but what are the most popular scams that you're seeing right now?
Well, let's just be clear that the scammers follow the headlines just like you and I do. So if there's a natural disaster in one community, they're certainly going to target that. We see it with the floods, the fires, tornadoes, whatever it is. And so they're pretty adept at changing their script, obviously. But right now, what we're seeing on the helpline are certainly imposter scams. This is where someone will call you or text you and saying that there's, a problem with your Amazon account. So they're impostering a business. Or they're going to call and say they're with the Social Security Administration and a car was found that was rented with your Social Security number and there were drugs and blood in that car. No joke. This is a very popular scam. And what that does is it just gets people so scared that, of course, they're going to listen to that person on the phone because they don't want to get in trouble. So romance scams, they're popular all throughout the year, unfortunately. And it doesn't have to start as a romance. It can start as just a friendship. Maybe you're on social media and someone sends you a friend request and you're like, I think I remember that person from high school. I'm not sure. And then the next thing you know, they have some sort of crisis and need money from you. So that's certainly a popular scam. We're also seeing those morph a little bit into some of the cryptocurrency investment scams, because when you're in a relationship and you're starting to talk about like what you do for fun and just, sharing things about each other, the criminal will say, well, actually, I dabble in crypto a little bit. I've been very successful with it. And you are thinking, oh, well, that's interesting. I've heard about that on the news. And they'll say, oh, don't worry. I have the best investor, professional to take charge of your money. And then we're also seeing a lot of these tech support scams. That's, again, where the remote access comes into it. It can start as an imposter scam. It can start as a bank impersonation scam. But what they want at the end of the day is they want to be able to get on your computer or your phone, your device, and remote access into it so they have control of it. And then they enter your peer-to-peer apps like Venmo, Cash App, and Zelle and transfer the money out. Or they actually get into your bank account and they'll wire money out of your account to a different location. And most often than not, that money is unreversible. So we've seen people lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in that scam.
Wow. They're very high tech. I mean, they really are sophisticated in a lot of ways. Well, Amy, thank you. Thank you for talking with me today. I've learned a lot and makes me a lot more wary, but at the same time cautious, I think, even in day-to-day life. But thank you. I appreciate this and all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And that's it for this episode of AFMC TV. Thanks for watching and have a great day.